You're watching history being made. Tawny crazy ants, also known as raspberry crazy ants, are being crushed by an extreme green crazy ant crusher. You're seeing completely new concepts in ant treatment. They're being used here for the first time anywhere. If you're familiar with the crazy ant problem, this project will excite you. Here is a time-lapse view of ants accumulating in the trap. This was about half an hour after the test began. An hour later. 2 hours later. 2.5. 3. 3.5. 4. 5. 6. 7. And finally 8 hours later. It was starting to rain, and I did not have the roof available, so I stopped the experiment at this time. This is the side view when it was stopped. Notice how thick the accumulation of ants is becoming. 2 boxes of live crickets at the bottom provided initial bait. A white sheet of paper shows the ants as they accumulated. The donut ring is the pattern they formed as they fell from the crusher. The time-lapse sequence was taken a few days ago on July 30th of this year. The next day, a key experiment was successfully performed. The crickets used as initial bait were removed from the trap. The accumulated dead ants were left in the trap as a continuation bait. The test was to see just how effectively dead ants alone would act as bait, drawing ants into the trap and past the crusher. This clip shows the ants going into the trap at the start of the test. This is what it looked like 2 hours later. Notice there are significantly more ants going into the trap 2 hours after the test began. This is important. It shows that accumulated dead ants in a trap are sufficient to provide continuation bait for trap operation. Once a critical number of ants have been killed, the killed ants themselves are sufficient to draw an increasingly larger number of ants into the trap. This phenomenon is a key critical principle for my new treatment scheme. This shows a complete system. The crusher we were just looking at is mounted in the ceiling of a plexiglass ant trap. Plexiglass is only used for initial tests. The long white strip is what I call an ant freeway guide strip. The guide strip leads ants to the trap. The roof has been removed so that you can see the crusher better. This shows ants crawling on an ant freeway guide strip. Although crazy ants are named after their erratic, crazy walking pattern, the truth is that they prefer to walk on a smooth surface along a sharp edge. When an ant freeway guide strip is placed on the ground in the path of an ant looking for food, once the ant climbs onto the strip, it will tend to follow it a ways before it gets off. This characteristic is used to encourage ants to come to the trap, where the odors from the trap and the trails going to and from it will then lead the ants to it. Notice, all of the ants are walking along the length of the trap. None of them are crossing over it sideways. This is important. The guide strip greatly increases the effectiveness of a trap. My name is Tim Stout. I have 4 decades of experience as a professional design engineer in industry. For the last several years, I have been studying tawny crazy ant behavior. This study has led to some unique new concepts in how to treat these ants. They're chemical-free. Everything about this project is friendly to the environment. Exterm Green is the trademark I am using for the products coming out of this research. Green extermination is important to all of us, which is what this project is about. Until this project, the only available treatments have been expensive, provide only partial and temporary relief, and are so toxic that it takes a special EPA waiver just to use them. The EPA only grants the waiver for a short period at a time, hoping that a better solution will come along. This project could well be the solution the EPA and all the rest of us have been waiting for. Tawny crazy ants present a severe ecological problem. They form supercolonies. Adjacent nests do not compete for territory. The ants view each other as members of the same family. The result is that they can easily travel over 1/4 of a mile for food without getting into a turf fight. Since there are too many ants in a neighborhood to kill all of them, the goal becomes to divert them from your house and yard into traps. This drawing illustrates the basic treatment approach. Your house is in a yard surrounded by a fence, and it needs to be protected. You're doing everything right to reduce the problem. Your lawn is kept well trimmed. No debris is on your property. There's no standing water to attract ants. There is a readily available list of things to do to reduce the number of ant nests on your property, and you're doing them. However, crazy ants easily forage 1/4 of a mile, and ants from your neighbors keep coming to your place. They're persistent, and you can't do anything about them. You kill one batch only to have it replaced with a new one. So, ant freeway guide strips run along the inside fence edges of your property. Ants coming to the guide strips will tend to travel along them instead of crossing them. A trap is placed at each corner of the property next to the guide strips. As an ant walks down the guide strips, it approaches other ants heading to one of the traps and decides to follow them. They lead it into a trap. The atmosphere is full of alarm pheromones, which further draw them to the trap. The ants are lured to the trap and away from your house and yard by the ant freeway guide strips. For diversion to work, ants must be effectively drawn to a trap. We use 3 ways to lure ants to a trap and thus divert them away from the site you want to protect. The first is guide strips. We've already talked about how ants prefer to walk on a smooth surface along a sharp edge. The second is recruiting, and the third is their attraction to alarm pheromones. Have you ever dropped a piece of food on the ground and couldn't see an ant in sight? After a few minutes, maybe a single ant finds it. Soon, the food is covered with ants. This process is called recruiting. An ant first makes what it considers a major food find, and then it recruits a horde of ants to return to the site. Typically, we want our trap to release at least half of the ants that enter it. That is why the rotating crusher pauses. The pause allows about half the ants to leave without being injured, so that they can recruit other ants to come back to the trap. This is the best way to attract a large number of ants. You're about to see alarm pheromones in action. I counted about 15 ants on this board. They are calm and have been feasting all night on some apple jelly that they were only slightly interested in. Then I crushed one of them. Almost immediately, chaos broke loose. Ants started high-speed darts back and forth. I crushed a few more. After 10 minutes, I counted 45 ants. Perhaps 5 or 6 of these were dead, so the actual number was about 40. Still, in 10 minutes, the population almost tripled, going from 15 ants to 40 ants. This was in response to the half a dozen ants or so that had been crushed. When an ant crusher crushes ants, the ants will release pheromones which help draw ants to the trap. This is another key component of my approach. This is a small project. The minimum funding amount is $4,000. This is trivial compared to the damage these ants are causing on a regular basis. If you personally have a tawny crazy ant infestation, just the drop in property value on your home alone could well be larger than our minimum funding goal, if you can even sell it. Your help in making this project successful would be greatly appreciated. This includes not only financial help, but also testing the equipment in your particular situation and communicating your results on the blog. Please help me in this effort.